Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is L24 News, streaming live from the capital Algiers. I'm Abdurrahim Kashor, and coming up next in our news program. The Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan arrived on stage to deliver a speech to the Russian and Ukrainian delegation before the start of peace talks, which is held in Istanbul. Ukrainian forces have succeeded to retake control of one of the suburbs of Kiev, Irpin. Experts reveal evidence about the government's involvement in disappearance of 43 students in 2014. Thousands of workers began voting Friday whether to unionize at an Amazon facility, demanding better working conditions, longer breaks and higher wages. Starting with the latest updates on the Russia-Ukraine fire, Ukraine and Russian officials are holding face-to-face talks in Istanbul, Turkey. Kiev says its top priority from the discussion is to secure an immediate ceasefire, but both sides have played down the prospect of any breakthrough. President Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukrainian forces have retaken control of Irpin, a key town located near the capital Kiev. Ukraine says it will resume civilians' evacuations via humanitarian corridors after one-day pause over safety concerns. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan arrived on stage to deliver a speech to the Russian and Ukrainian delegations before the start of the peace talks, which is held in Istanbul. The Turkish president told the Russian and Ukrainian delegations that they must resume the face-to-face discussion in which both sides have legitimate concerns and that it is possible to reach a solution.
Both parties have legitimate concerns, and it is possible to reach a solution that is accepted by the international community.
According to Kiev City's Maya, Ukrainian forces have succeeded to retake control of one of the suburbs of Kiev, Irpin. Suburban region was one of the number of towns west of the capital that endured heavy fights as Russian troops attempt to advance toward Kiev in the early days of military operation. Ukrainian authorities in Mariupol estimated that almost 5,000 Ukrainian civilians have been killed since February 24th, the start of the Russian military operation in Ukraine. Mariupol witnessed several battles between Russians and Ukrainian forces. Some 150,000 others have fled the city or were evacuated through humanitarian corridors. Wall Street Journal reported that Russian oligarch Roman Abramovich, who is trying to mediate between Moscow and Kiev to an end to this war in Ukraine, and to have suffered that suggests possible poisoning. Two Germans stated they have outlawed public displays of the letter Z or Z, which has become synonymous with support for Russia's war in Ukraine. Authorities in Bavaria and Lower Saxony said over the weekend that anyone who displays the symbol at public demonstration or paints it on cars or buildings could face fine or up to 3 years in jail.
Those who exhibit the Z sign in favor of Russia's military operation in Ukraine will face legal consequences in Germany, according to authorities. Z sign usage to glorify what Germany called Russian war crimes will be handled by Berlin's Interior Minister Nancy Faeser, who made the announcement Monday.
The letter Z as such is of course not forbidden, but its use in individual cases constitute an endorsement of the Russian war of aggression.
Officials in Berlin, Bavaria, Saxony and Lower Saxony have already indicated they would punish anybody who displays the sign in their states. It has been claimed that other German states, such as Saxony and Anhalt, have also said they would prosecute anybody who used the sign in their areas.
The Russian war of aggression on Ukraine is a criminal act, and whoever publicly approves this war of aggression can also make himself liable to prosecution.
The letter Z, which is part of the Latin alphabet but not the Cyrillic one used in Russian, first appeared on tanks and other military vehicles massing near Russia's border with Ukraine, possibly as a way to distinguish them from Ukrainian forces. Once the invasion began, Z was hard to miss. The letter was featured across social media and was plastered on billboards and stickers throughout Russia. Even outside of the country, the symbol has appeared on clothing. The origins of the sign may be mysterious.
The head of the Russian diplomacy, Sergei Lavrov, announced that a decree is in preparation to limit access to the Russian territory to nationals of countries responsible for unfriendly acts in the midst of a wave of sanctions against Moscow. Let's have a listen.
A presidential decree draft is in preparation to introduce retaliatory measures concerning visas in connection with unfriendly actions of several foreign governments. This draft provides for a whole series of restrictions to enter Russia.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced the creation of a group of experts who will analyze the sanctions against Russia, emphasizing that his goal is for the sanctions to be effective.
We are creating a group of Ukrainian and international experts in the office of the president who will constantly analyze the sanctions against Russia. What is their real impact? Our goal is that the penalties are effective as intended, and that there is no possibility of circumventing them.
US President Joe Biden said he is not retaking his controversial remarks, suggesting he wants his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin out of power. Joe Biden said his remarks express personal outrage and not a policy in favor of regime change.
I just was expressing my outrage. He shouldn't remain in power. Just like, bad people shouldn't continue to do bad things. But it doesn't mean we have a fundamental policy to do anything to take Putin down in any way. Because it's ridiculous. Nobody believes we're going to take down. I was talking about taking down Putin. Nobody believes that. And I'm not walking anything back. The fact of the matter is I was expressing the moral outrage I felt toward the way Putin is dealing in the actions of this man. Just brutality of it. Half the children in Ukraine. I just come from being with those families. But I want to make it clear, I wasn't then, nor am I now, articulating a policy change. I was expressing the moral outrage that I feel, and I make no apologies for it.
Jan Egeland, Secretary General of the Norwegian Refugee Council, the humanitarian organization, said that he hopes the overflow of resources for Ukraine will also translate regarding emergencies elsewhere, including Syria, Ethiopia, Afghanistan, and also Venezuela.
We see the Cold War now between the powers that we need to cooperate on Security Council resolutions and so on. How will we have resolutions on Syria in the future if Russia and the US cannot cooperate anymore? I'm nervous for the future for these countries, so we need to fight for peace in solidarity with the neglected emergencies, even as we deal with war in Europe. I hope that the outpouring of resources for Ukraine, the voluntarism for Ukraine, the willingness to receive and shield and help Ukrainians will also be translated to the emergencies elsewhere, from Syria to Ethiopia, from Afghanistan to Venezuela.
Amnesty, the International Association for Defense of Human Rights, warned that the situation in Ukraine is a rehearsal of the war in Syria. The association had announced a multiplication of war crimes after more than a month of conflict and calls for abandonment of any position of neutrality vis-à-vis life in Moscow.
Our call is clear. All these arbitrary laws introduced and that are introducing excessive and unwarranted restrictions on people's right to express, demonstrate, etc., they need to be withdrawn. Otherwise, we risk of seeing this becoming the new normal, and we need to push back.
The humanitarian spaces should allow people to escape, just like in Syria, where Russia has used that a lot in a horrible way. Moreover, we see the same thing again here. They claim to create humanitarian passages, and in fact, they are often death traps.
President Vladimir Putin's demands that unfriendly countries pay for Russian gas in rubles are rejected by energy ministers from the group of 7 industrialization nations. The proposal by the Russian president was described by Germans, which now holds the G7 leadership, an literally an obvious break of the existing accords. Germany's Robert Habeck said after talks with his counterparts on Monday. Let's have a listen.
Und alle G7 Ministerinnen und Minister haben
All G7 ministers have agreed that this is a unilateral and clear breach of existing contracts. They underlined once again that the concluded contracts are valid and the companies should and must respect them. This means a payment of rubles is unacceptable, and we call on the companies concerned not to comply with Putin's demand. Putin's attempt to divide us is obvious, but as you can see from the great unity and determination, we will not be divided.
The president of Peru, the leftist Pedro Castillo, will save this Monday from being removed by the Congress dominated by the right-wing opposition. Castillo was accused of corruption and moral incapacity, but the Peruvian president denied the allegations and said a coup tentative was planned against him. Nabil Khazini.
Elected last July, Peru's left-wing president Pedro Castillo avoided an impeachment proceeding initiated by the parliament, which had filed a case for moral incapacity. After more than 8 hours of debate, 55 lawmakers voted in favor of the impeachment, 44 against, while 19 abstained. A minimum of 87 votes was required by the Constitution for the impeachment to be pronounced.
The vacancy promoted is due to the cause of permanent moral incapacity. Everyone knows that it does not contain a single element that validly supports it, since it is a compilation of versions of a sector of the press.
Pedro Castillo was accused of corruption, but the former teacher from a peasant farming family said he had not broken the law since he took office, calling for unity to deal with political and economic crisis.
Subject to the rules of democracy that allowed a rural teacher to reach the presidency, and with the weight of responsibility that this entails, I will always defend the country.
Outside the Congress, thousands of Peruvians formed a pro- and anti-Castillo rallies.
We have come here to give our absolute support, because the people elected Pedro Castillo so that he can govern and bring about change, and we are here to give our absolute support to our president. And what we are all asking for here is for Parliament to be closed.
The country can't take it anymore because the corruption can't continue. Now we need a person like the President of the Assembly to put an end to all these wars between Fujimorism, hatred, the left.
This is the second time that Castillo has faced an impeachment process in a country where every president in the last 36 years has been accused of corruption.
More than 70 people have been killed in El Salvador in just 2 days. This stoked up fear among people. The incident urged the government to intervene and declare the state of emergency as an act to curb the violence by the most dangerous gangs in the South American country. Islam Sidon was follow.
Amid the surge of killings and gang activities in El Salvador, which left up to 80 people dead, have created fear among the population and human rights groups, who urge the government to curb the unstoppable violence. Experts believe that the MS-13 and other gangs aim at sending a message to the government to gain privileges, which the government denies to offer. The Parliament of El Salvador, at the request of President Nayib Bukele, announced a state of emergency on Sunday to reduce civil liberties and extend the power of police for 1 month in order to combat the wave of gang-related bloodshed. Footage shows Salvadoran soldiers patrolling the streets following the government's declaration. El Salvador's police and army have launched an operation against one of the country's most dangerous gangs, La Mar Salvatrucha, after recording 62 homicides in the country's most violent day in 20 years.
On March 28, 2022, the Philippine Coast Guard accused China's Coast Guard vessels of a close-distance maneuvering near this dispute area in the South China Sea, following that the Chinese Foreign Minister spokesperson Wang Wenbin claimed that Beijing has sovereignty over Pantag Sowal, which is the Chinese called Honghuainan Dao. Let's have a listen.
The Huainan Islands are an intrinsic territory of China. China possesses sovereignty over the Huainan Islands and their nearby waters, and possesses sovereign rights and the right of jurisdiction over the relevant waters. It is hoped that the ships of the Philippine side sincerely respect the sovereignty, rights and interests of China, and strictly abide by China's national laws and international laws to avoid disruption and affecting the Chinese Coast Guard patrolling the aforementioned waters.
North Korea's leader Kim Jong has ordered an advertising operation to raise popular support for the country's philosophy, which is based on self-sufficiency. This comes amid West sanctions imposed against its weapons tests, natural disasters, and more specifically the COVID-19 lockdown, which came as a barrier against trade with China. Kim sent a letter to Workers' Party leaders joining a workshop on Monday that was designed to enhance incentives for socialism and advance innovation in the party's ideological work. Bangladesh shut the largest private school in Rohingya camps, which is a school for Rohingya refugees. The closure is another setback to the educational prospects of children stuck in West Camp in the southeast of the country. The principal of the school explains that everything was going well until the police came, confiscated the material, and shut the institution.
Closing schools will create a deep crisis for children. If they can't go to school, they will be involved in something bad.
Suddenly, armed police officers in charge of a camp security came in and asked if we had a written permission from the camp manager to operate. We told them that we had a verbal permission. We had a printer and a laptop to print the questions for the students. They confiscated them in the evening. The next day, they came and took everything. The whiteboard, the benches, chairs. They also took other items in vehicle.
Experts revealed evidence about the government's involvement in the disappearance of 43 students in 2014. Mexican case that raised criticism over the Mexican government credibility among families of the missing ones and created suspects among independent experts' minds, which led them to seek illegal investigation methods.
A group of international experts declared the Mexican government falsified investigations of 43 students' case in 2014. The group obtained a government drone video showing Marines and police climbing around the area where the students were allegedly killed.
There is information that has been withheld from us as experts, but above all, that has been withheld from the investigation and that has prevented, hindered full clarification of facts.
Angela Buitrago, former Colombian prosecutor, claimed the experts found evidence that government changed crime scenes and records.
The authorities had changed information, denied any knowledge of the facts of where the students were. It was falsified from the first day to the last day.
Experts revealed that the students who were claimed missing were kidnapped by local police in southern Guerrero State, who seemingly killed them and burned their bodies. Investigators sought to quickly resolve the crime through illegal searches, detentions, and torture of suspects after casting doubt on Mexican officials' sayings.
The new evidence allows us to determine, and I say this now with complete certainty, that the intervention before the prosecution proceedings was made by persons who had neither jurisdiction nor rank for the survey.
Most of the students' bodies have never been found, though burned bone fragments have been matched to 3 students. The investigations have long been criticized by the families of the victims, who were allegedly handed over to a drug gang and slain and have not been heard from since then.
Officials in the Republic of Congo says fighters, which are announced to be related to the M23 armed group, launched an attack on a military site, triggering heavy fighting, which started at around 1 a.m. local time near the capital and continued until 11 a.m. local time. Thousands of workers began voting Friday whether to unionize an Amazon facility, demanding better working conditions, longer breaks and higher wages. Efforts in other Amazon facilities are underway, where an election will begin next month. It is the second Amazon warehouse union vote in a year, a potentially worrying indication for a corporation that has typically refrained organized labor. Will Smith apologizes for slapping Chris Rock at Oscar ceremony after the comedian made a joke about Jada Pinkett Smith's wife. The Oscars winner published a statement on Instagram on Monday evening saying that violence in all of its form is a poison and destructive, and his behavior at last night's Academy Award was unacceptable and something wrong. He apologized to Chris Rock and to the Film Academy producers of the telecast, attendance, viewers, and Williams family and the King Richard family. The film critic Tim Cogshall commented on Smith's behavior, saying that after his accident he will no longer enjoy the stature, access, and connections he had in Hollywood.
So can he go on? Sure. Can he go on in Hollywood with the same stature and access and connections that he had before last night? No. There are people in Hollywood, very important people, powerful people, people who greenlight films, that will simply not want to be associated with that event or him or anything that comes with that ever.
Coming to sport now, the Algerian national team will face the Cameroonian Lions in the second match of their World Cup qualifier tonight, Tuesday, March 29th at 8:30. The game will be held at Mustafa Chakra Stadium in Al Blida. The Phoenix are 90 minutes away from reaching the finish line as they carried advantage from the first game win. To this end, ladies and gentlemen, let's have a reminder for our main stories. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan arrived on stage to deliver a speech to the Russian and Ukrainian delegation before the start of the peace talks, which is held in Istanbul. Ukrainian forces have succeeded to retake control of one of the suburbs of Kiev towns, Irvin. Experts revealed evidence about the government's involvement in the disappearance of 43 students in 2014 in Mexico. Thousands of workers began voting Friday whether to unionize at an Amazon facility, demanding better working conditions, longer breaks, and higher wages. That's all for today's bulletin. Thank you so much for being with us. Our 24 program is still rolling, so stay tuned for further information. Bye-bye.